MLB slate. Sheets. Well, we'll jump into yours. It's like I had a really lousy night, and I'm ready to move past it. I just didn't get anything other than like you said, that it was weird to get the pitching right and then not make money, because that's been the hardest part this season. Some of the time. Sheets, talk a little bit about your night and how things are going.
Yeah, I mean, again, I went 90% Nola, and he almost got a no-hitter, honestly, that he gave up a 900-foot home run that really didn't even hurt him because it was all unearned because there was kind of an error earlier. And then what I did was I had 50% Snell, and then in the non-Snell lineups, I played Abbott, which he was great. I mean, I just remember when we talked about the different stacks, and I did say that according to my leverage stuff, Houston was like really, really good, but I didn't play them. I did play the Cubs in my big buy-in, and whatever, they didn't get to them. And then even in my littler ones, I don't know. I just don't know. I guess I forgot to play Philly, I suppose. It was kind of funny where I'm like, let's start with Turner, who had the 0 the day before. That would have been fun if we actually did that.
Yep.
So I just made some kind of fishy decisions, and that's the way it goes. But we got another one tonight. Is it good on FanDuel today or no?
Mine was worse. Just real quick, I stacked Philly like 4 times, and I didn't have any. Any of them. I really tried to go away from it because I knew he'll bounce back at some point, but I don't know. I just tried something different anyway. Sorry, what was the question you asked?
Is there FanDuel good tonight?
They have the 150 with the 100K for first. It's like a bunch of
I'm doing that then. Okay.
Yeah, that's almost like a fun little scripting thing. Anyway, but I'm also excited because I talked to the DraftKings people, and I'm going to at least the first day of the U.S. Open next week, which will be fun. It's right in
the golf?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And then I've got about 20 friends going separately. So a lot of them volunteering just so they didn't have to get tickets. So it should be a fun time. So looking forward
to it. DraftKings will probably have a good little tent there too.
Yeah, I'd imagine. And it's in a great spot. I'm literally down the street from where I grew up. So.
Oh, really?
Kind of neat. Yeah. The other country club. So yeah, right in Center City.
Yeah. So needless to say, we'll deal with the RBC this weekend. Yep. And then we got U.S. Open on Father's Day weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, yeah, we can jump into the slate whenever you want to pull your things up. I think it's a good slate. I went through it all last night, and I'm curious. I looked again this morning, but I haven't gone through all the ownerships and everything because I'm really curious. I want to stick with what I wanted to do last night, sort of regardless of ownership. So. We'll see if that works out the same, because I really did do a pretty in-depth look myself just because I had some time and I was there was no NBA on and my kid was asleep, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to spend my night getting this ready. So ready to dive into it whenever you are.
I am, and it's funny. I want to show you what my pre-look build. Should we do that? Yeah, why not? Yeah. This is like before projections or whatever it was. This is what I came up with last night, and that was going to be was San Francisco, Chicago would be the 2 teams I was going to look at. This is why without even looking at anything. And the 2 pitchers I came up with was Musgrove and Peralta. That was where I started. Now this is like I didn't see projections, didn't see anything. So I'm interested to see where we. And I'm literally looking at the projections as we're doing this live. So. And it's interesting. There's one guy that I was very I'm actually pretty shocked at what his projection is, especially by Saberson. But we'll get into that. Yeah. All right, so let's get started. White Sox.
There's a guy a little bit like that for me in this first game.
Okay.
So because after you go through the slate enough times, you kind of understand maybe why, but. It was weird to me to look at Clark Schmidt being early projection at 30% ownership. I mean, or right near there. That seems like a lot. And on a big slate, it is the White Sox, and they have been dreadful. But it's in Yankee Stadium. It's pretty good hitting weather. I actually think that if I was gonna play a pitcher in this game, I'd be more likely to take just a total gamble and hope you get the really good Giolito. But both of these guys, I think, are in play enough. And I don't think there's anything wrong with playing. Certainly, I mean, even if you don't stack the Yankees, playing some Yankees can certainly make sense. You've got a cheap Donaldson or LeMahieu, depending on which one plays. Really depends on what lineup comes out, but I don't have a ton of interest in the hitting. I don't mind the idea of a mini Yankees against the Giolito, but I'm not overly trying to get invested in this game from a hitting standpoint. And I think both pitchers are in play. I'll see where they rank at the end.
My current ownership is a little different. I have Schmidt at only 15% ownership.
That makes more sense to me.
And I have him rated about third, fourth, fifth, sixth or something on the slate.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not that big a deal for me. But I mean, like you said, I mean, the White Sox are a good team to go after. I will say, by the way, I don't know where Roth came in, but there are threats of thunderstorms later here. I don't know if that it's going to go to game time or anything like that. But it definitely had a flash thunderstorm here like a little while ago, and from what I see, it's supposed to. That's got a chance later. I don't know if that impacts the baseball game or if it's just out here, Long Island or whatever it is. I just figured I'd throw it out there. I did actually play the game that got rained out last week without having to double check. So who got rained out late? Was it a Met? I forget what game it was. Oh, the Red Sox game. I think.
That's right. There was that game, but it was a little weird. But I think this one looks like it should be.
Yeah. So I'm not getting. I mean, I have Schmidt as a secondary play, and then as I look at the stacks, I'm not getting to either team hitting wise, whether it be value or raw points. So I'm probably going to be, and I'm not going to do the Giolito. So for me, maybe Schmidt a little bit, and that's probably it.
All right. Let's move over to the next one. I'm guessing that it seems like Arizona, Washington for you.
Hey, there it is. We're already hot.
Yeah. Well, this time I'm trying to look back and forth. I'm trying to get better at this process. Well, here what you have is interesting because you have two teams in extremely good hitting spots and two bad pitchers on the mound and two teams that are going to be totally unowned. I am totally fine with taking the stacks in this game. No interest in the pitching. I just personally like other stacks better. There's a lot of good stacks to like. It feels like wrong to put Washington as like a priority on a slate this size. If you wanted to maybe make a mini stack with like Stone Garrett, Keeper Ruiz, Luis, maybe Meneses, like on the cheap, I think that's okay. Totally. I also think it's okay to totally stack these teams. And I would be, if I had to pick one to stack, I'd be more interested in Arizona just because they're much better. But as of right now, I'm not getting to these teams, but I do think that both of them are really interesting tournament plays because they're going to be unowned and they're in great spots on other slates. Like yesterday, this would have been the massive chalk, and you just have a 12 gamer with a lot of good offenses in really good spots. So these guys are going to fall a little bit by the wayside, and I think that they're definitely a good. If you're playing a lot of tournaments, I think you should definitely get exposure to them.
My mythical leverage score, which still has not been released to everybody, gives me Arizona as the top overall leverage play on the whole slate. So I will just kind of just throw that out there. And I'm not seeing the Washington side of it really. I'm just really seeing the Arizona side, and that's pretty much all I got. I just threw the 5 guys that I kind of just identified into this lineup here, and they're pretty expensive, some of them. So I guess that's one of the reasons why people aren't going to play them, I guess. And because they're Arizona, they're not that great. You know what I mean? But yeah, I like Arizona here as a GPP play. So, and I don't like either of the pitchers.
Yep. Same. Similar there. I think that was one, like I was looking at, I was like, oh, this looks like a good spot. Then I went through the rest of the games and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of really, really good spots today. Okay. So you got Keller against Oakland and I am in Caprillion against Pittsburgh. I have the sense that Pittsburgh is going to end up the second most popular team on the slate. Seems like a little bit of a I don't want to say it's a reach because I see that it's a good spot also. But it's just interesting because, like, for example, they have a very similar total to Arizona, and you're going to have Pittsburgh partly because if Markov, it's going to open things up, and he's 2.1, and then you get Sawinski at 3K, Santana's 1.8. So I see why pricing wise that they would look good. I am into the Pirates, but I don't think I want to play that kind of chalk again, especially when there's other teams that I really like. but I have no problem with it. There'll probably be in one of my FanDuel 4 entries or something like that as a 3 or 4 man. But we know Caprillions has struggled, and we know that the A's bullpen is the worst ever. The A's currently on pace to lose the most rec teams, the most games of any team in Major League history right now. They're on pace, I think, for 30 wins. Anyway, so I can get behind the Pittsburgh thing, and I definitely think Keller is actually going to be lower owned than he probably should be, so he'll go up my list. But there's a lot of options to consider today. You like the matchup for Keller. Everybody has this perception of him being way overpriced. Based on what he's done this year, he's certainly not overpriced. Even when he hasn't pitched as well in the last couple of games and given up a ton of hits, he still has gotten through with decent games. And those were, his strikeout rate is incredible. He's not walking anybody or hardly anybody this season. I'm good with Keller as being one of the top pitchers, potentially the top pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, I'm not too into Pittsburgh at high ownership myself. They do make a lot of other stuff go though. So especially like you said with Marcano at 2,100. So if you're going to pay up for pitching, I mean, I think that's not the worst idea in the world. But as far as them at high ownership, I'd rather not do it. I guess the interesting play is Keller, like you said. I mean, it's a really, really big price. All right. But I mean, he's put up big boy numbers and he's got a big boy matchup, So I'm, as uncomfortable it might be to click it, you can't really give me a good reason not to. Well, you can. I mean, listen, there are other options for sure, and 10-9 is 10-9. But if you can make it work, yeah, I mean, he certainly can justify that price tag, especially with this matchup. So yeah, I like Keller. I'm probably not going to do Pittsburgh, although I see when they rank number 1 as my value stacks go, but I don't know. I just don't know how much of them I'm actually going to do.
Yeah. They do look good. I mean, it's just a matter of the ownership.
I mean, I get who is it? Marcano. Who else is there? Bay, Reynolds, Santana,
Lewinsky. Yeah. Assuming that he's in today, which I think
is that other guy still in the Castro? I mean,
Castro, if he's in today, will be further down in the order. Would be my guess, but he hasn't. He's been playing. I don't know. They've been sort of shuffling the lineup up, so I think you keep an eye out for their lineup because I honestly can't tell you. Even if Marcano might be batting 9th, even if he plays, he might be batting 1st. It's really hard to know with Pittsburgh.
Well, Reynolds at 5K, he won't be that popular, right?
He'll have some ownership, yeah. I think so because he'd be the guy who people may use to make the stack. Nobody's playing McCutchen that's the one who will get overlooked. All right. So next up with Houston and Toronto, both excellent pitchers. It's somewhat appealing to just say, okay, close your eyes and I'll play Brown at 1/10 the ownership of Gausman. I think Gausman. And I've been okay with taking shots against Houston, but I think he's definitely interesting to me. He's on my board. He's one of the guys. I think I would rather play Keller than Gausman today, and that's partly due to ownership. And it is a tough matchup. Let's not forget, it's still Houston, even though I've targeted them a couple times this year. So all this to say, I think that my general look on this is probably I would use Hunter Brown for large field GPPs. And I think Gausman is completely reasonable. I just think that, I don't know, I'm sort of going to talk myself out of spending up on DraftKings because the stacks I like the most are pretty expensive. But I do think that both these pitchers are definitely viable. I think Gausman is going to be really popular, and I'm okay with fading that much chalk because even if he gets 25, there's just going to be other pitchers who can get close enough, and I can use the bats I want, if that makes sense.
I'll go back to the first thing that you said, that I would just rather play Keller than Gausman. Mm-hmm. I have Keller projecting a little worse, but not much. And he's at half the ownership. I think that's GPP 101. So yeah. So I like Gausman in the spot. Well, not in the spot. I just like him just he's pitching really well. Spot sucks. You know what I mean? So I'll probably end up not playing him in the big buy-in. If I do pay up, I will probably be for Keller. And obviously both I don't think I'm going to go with Hunter Brown though. You prefer to go Brown instead of Gauss. I just prefer Keller instead of Gauss. Brown's really good though. Like
I don't prefer Brown. I just think Brown is an incredible tournament play at no ownership.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the idea.
And remember, they've never seen him before. There is a factor to that can sometimes go both ways. But that's a real thing. Like for
that changeup of his just drops out of the sky. I mean, no, he's real. He's good. Yeah, I don't know. Gals will end up showing up in lineups, but I'm not going to probably force him into big buy-ins. I'll probably do something else.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. We got Boston and Cleveland. This looks like a game that actually you don't want to take any of the hitting based on the weather. Let me just double check the weather that it's still the same as what I was looking at. Yeah, 67 degrees only, 11-mile-an-hour winds blowing in, and two completely viable pitchers.
You're not giving up yet, huh?
No, I'm not giving up yet. We got to play the long sample thing. I think once you get into like the 5%, 10% range for guys who might and their huge shavings off of guys. I mean, play this game a month ago and Bieber being less than Keller would have been the big news. Now it's just, of course we can't play Bieber anymore. I think both these guys are in play. I'm higher on Bieber than I am on Paxton, which I know is against what people are thinking, but I like both of them. They're both in my mix. And because I'm spending down a little bit more at pitcher, there's a good chance I would use these guys more than the Gaussman and the Keller. That's where
I'll probably end up playing either. I prefer other guys under Paxton to him, even just on raw points. So I'm probably not going to play him, and I'm just I'm just not ready to. I just can't play Bieber right now. I was thinking when I was just before I looked at projections that maybe Paxton sucks and they're supposed to play Cleveland, but I decided against it. So when I look at my projections and my numbers, I'm really not getting, I think, to either any of the hitting here. Just let me double check. No, and then with value, no. So I'm probably just going to be off this game. I'll root for you. I'll root for Bieber. But
we'll see if I really do it by the end of the day. But that I do believe that in the long run, it's good to not, to maybe be a little slower to give up when everyone gives up quick, and maybe to be a little faster when everyone doesn't. So I'm still taking that approach with a guy who I still think has a long career ahead of him. Maybe it won't be till next year that he starts pitching really well. The truth is, though, like if we just want to break it down into a funny way of looking at it, as bad as he's been this year, and Paxton has been this revelation. There's a 2-point difference in their fantasy points per game. You know what I mean? Like it's not like there's you could argue that Bieber's pitched against a much tougher schedule, hasn't really had the big game, but I don't know. It's just kind of funny to me, like just to totally give up on guys this early. But I do understand these slates. By the end of it, we'll probably not be talking as much about them. And there's another guy in this next game that let's see what your next one is. We're on pace.
I have Dodgers Reds.
Yeah. So this is the Dodgers are my favorite stack tonight. As you can, I always wear an LA hat, but I'm wearing a different LA hat today. So the Dodgers are my number one. And I like the problem I have to deal with is the ownership. And it's just they're my favorite. Do I need to play all of them? There are ways you can get a little bit different by playing, Outman, I think is going to be low owned. And it's just a really good spot for them. I would treat this the same almost as them being in Coors. The problem is, sadly, the ownership is treating them the same as if it was in Coors almost. I think against Weaver, they match up perfectly. It's 82 degrees with the wind blowing out in Cincinnati. It just feels like hard for them not to have a nice game here. But they're going to be really popular. And I think one thing you can do to get away from it, because there aren't that many pitchers. I mean, we just talked about what was it? What is he going to be on? 30 Clark Schmidt, whether it's 15 or 30%, whatever the percentage is. The guy who's not going to be owned at all is Tony Gonsolin, and Tony Gonsolin's a better pitcher than Clark Schmidt. Just going raw things, just raw. He's a better pitcher, and yeah, he's pitching in Cincinnati in the same good hitting conditions also, but it's Cincinnati. So I am completely open to the idea of Gonsolin as a get weird type of. Not that weird play. Like everybody's projecting, like Tony Gonsolin is projected for 3 less fantasy points tonight than now. Obviously, there's a higher ceiling on the Gaussman and all that, but he's projected 3 points lower, and he's going to be 2% owned at 8K versus 35% owned at 11K. I think we just wanted to make some gambles like this, and Clark Schmidt, like again, sort of the same thing, but I think he and Schmidt are almost like project for almost the same, and yet Schmidt's going to be 8 times, 10 times, 12 times the ownership of Gonsolin. So I'm willing to take a shot with Gonsolin, and I'm definitely going to play some Dodgers, whether I stack them fully or not, because the ownership, I do think this is the best spot on the slate of anybody.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to this later, but when I look at this, I have the Dodgers rated as the top overall, just on raw points, and I do have them rated as the highest owned as well. So I'm kind of in the same spot as you are. I mean, like gun to the head, who's going to score the most fantasy points? I would say the Dodgers. Although I still, all right, well, we'll get there.
There's a lot of teams, yeah. There's a lot of teams you can make arguments today.
We'll get there in a minute, but so yeah, I mean, I guess if this ownership is right and they are going to be the highest owned, then just don't play them with Gaussman or whatever. Just do something different. So, and like you said, one team you can play him with is one pitch you can play him with is Gonsolin. Like you said, it's a good little sneaky correlation. I think it's a sneaky correlation, just like very basic correlation.
Yeah.
I'm not getting to Cincinnati, and I'm not getting to Weaver, and I pretty much agree with you.
Nice. All right. Well, we can move on to the next one, which is okay. So
I have the Mets and the Braves.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I actually. Okay, so I think that the Braves are the two teams that I went in today knowing that I wanted to stack the most were the Mets and the Braves. I'm sorry, the Dodgers and the Braves. And with the Braves, you're going to get lower ownership because people are going to spend that money on the Dodgers because the Dodgers are expensive and the Braves are expensive and they're hard to get together. You have to kind of sacrifice some things on pitching to get them together, but you can do it. It's just but it's a good way to get a little, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to see full Dodger stacks with 3 Braves very often. And even if you did have the 3 Braves, it's really hard to well, they're all going to be low owned. So it's hard to, it's just really hard to afford the ones you'd want on both sides. So I like the Braves a lot. I actually think, we've been talking about how Carrasco is broken and everything. Carrasco has looked really good his last 2 outings, and they were not outings that you would expect him to look good in. Now, he's not going to strike out people. I'm not saying we should play him on this slate, but at some point at 5,900, I will start taking shots on a guy who's maybe we were too quick to think he lost it while he was coming back from an injury, and maybe he refines himself at some point. I just want to think about that for the future. For today, probably not as relevant. But I like the Braves, and that's pretty much all I have in this one.
Yeah, I have the Braves as projected number 2. I still don't understand why. We'll get to it later. But I do have them slightly, probably firmly number 2, and owned less than the Dodgers, like you said. So I think Braves are very much a very natural pivot off of the Dodgers. And as far as Carrasco goes, I mean, I've been calling him trash for 2 years now, so I'm not quite ready to jump on that, especially against Atlanta. Maybe listen, if you get him on a shorter slate against, you know what I mean, and against a worse team, I'll take a shot, but not for me.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I hate that. I think it's a tough matchup for him. I think especially being in Atlanta while it's 85 degrees and 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out, that doesn't sound good. But it was even surprising to see that Vegas is actually starting to give it. Like I thought Atlanta was going to have the highest run total on the slate today. I thought they would be close with the Dodgers, and they don't. I just think that maybe there's a little more there than we. Again, not the right slate for it probably, but just want to keep an eye out for Carrasco going forward. I'm also very biased because he has been probably my most successful pitcher historically, but it was mostly in 2016, 17, and 18 when I started playing DFS. He's made me a fortune. There's always a perception where people are always afraid because he has these weird blow-up games, even when he was good. But he, I don't know. I mean, I just want to wait. I just want to hold off before I decide that he's totally done forever.
It's so funny. We talk about. I don't know if you saw this in the Discord, but we talk about pitchers that have done well for you, bad for you, and I remember, Gaussman made you like 100,000 at least once, like a few years ago or something like that. And
when he was considered like the guy you wanted to tee off against,
right? The Gaussman Bundy combination, right?
Right, exactly.
And so last night I was sitting there, and I every time I play Aaron Nola, like it seems like he gives up like 5 runs for me. And so I was like whining before the slate even started. You know what I mean? That, oh my God, why am I playing Nola? All he does is bad for me. I totally forgot. I looked at our homepage, and my $100,000 score that's on our homepage had Nola in it.
Nola in it, yeah.
So we even talk ourselves into our own narratives. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's very true.
All right, so Baltimore against Milwaukee. Speaking of which, guys just can never get right. Yeah, I'll go right back to Peralta. Why not? Maybe he gets out of the first inning. We'll see. When I say get out of the first inning, they let him pitch anyway. I mean, maybe get out of the first inning without giving up 4 runs. How about that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go back to it at 7,700 with the upside. I kind of want to play Milwaukee here against Kyle Gibson. So that's kind of where I'm at. I like Peralta, and I kind of want to play Milwaukee. They're not projecting really well, but I just have this idea that I want to play them. That's the best I can describe it. So Peralta, Milwaukee, and lose. That's my combination.
Yeah, I think both pitchers are interesting. No interest in any of the hitting whatsoever. Milwaukee's a really, like in general on big slates, I just want to point this out to people. Like there's a lot of talk about them because people see they score runs and they do this and that. They don't have they don't have patient hitters outside of Yelich, really. Right. They strike out a ton, which is not good for stacking because it keeps the lineup moving, in the wrong way with no advancement of any kind. And I just don't like them on full. Like I would fully consider stacking them if it was a regular slate. But there's so many good offenses. Why am I going to take a team that I don't know can hit a couple home runs and win a game 5-3? It just feels like a wrong thing. Also, Kyle Gibson's been good. I don't know. There's a lot of talk about Kyle Gibson all the time as if he's some shitty pitcher. He's really not a bad pitcher. He gives up some hard contact, and somewhat that's because he usually in the past has been able to keep the walks down. And one thing about him this year, he hasn't given up more than 1 home run in a game. He's given up. Oh, he did have one game where he did his first start of the season. But he doesn't give up like a ton of crazy amount of power like he used to. I just think that he's like a better pitcher than he gets credit for. So I actually think he's totally just as interesting against Milwaukee, who is an offense I love to target pitchers against. But we'll see. Milwaukee's got some young guys that are very high variance, 3 strikeout, 1 home run kind of guys, or something like that. So I think both these guys are very, very fair. I don't think there's a huge gap between them. Peralta's going to be a lot more popular and has a lot higher upside. But I have no problem just playing some Kyle Gibson. And the reason I'm considering so many of these cheap guys is just, like I said, the stacks I like are expensive. All right, Texas and St. Louis. Sheets, why don't you start this one off?
Yeah, so I got something here. I don't really like either of the pitchers, but I do like Texas. I have Texas rated as my second best leverage stat behind Arizona. And hey, look, who's liberatory? When's the last time a liberal or libertarian did anything in Texas, right? Mm-hmm. So we're just gonna stack Texas on that narrative and just go with it. So it's either because they're a good leverage play or because the guy's name is liberatory. But either way, I think Texas is a pretty good GPP play today.
Yeah, it's hard to talk. I mean, I'm never going to complain and say Texas is a bad stack because they never are. They have, I think, every player on their team at the moment has an OPS over 800. That's well above average. That's amazing to have everybody on your team that high. That would be literally in the 70s or something, if you had 9 guys who were hitting 300. It's really amazing. I actually think that there are going to be spots, not necessarily like this, but in the future where I end up playing liberatory. I actually put him in my first build because I couldn't find any pitcher to fit my build right. But it was just a holding place spot, which I'm going to adjust and update in our premium later. But I think that this game is pretty much a stay away for me personally. For what it's worth, it wouldn't shock me if Liberatore went out there and had a really, really good game. He's a top prospect, and it's a good Texas lineup that that's it. You're just taking a chance. But if I had to do anything in this game, that would be it. I don't mind if you want to argue for stacks or any pieces from either side. I'm just personally not very interested.
All right, so you're gonna have to explain this one to me. And this one's I've been confused about the whole day. About
every week.
What?
It's been the same every start. For you talking about the Brebbia thing?
No.
Sorry.
Where you have a team going into Colorado, I'm expecting them to be like 80% owned, like every other team that goes into Colorado, and they're like fourth as far as ownership goes and third as far as projection goes. I don't exactly understand it. We have just because Dinelson Lamet like was once thought to be decent. Like
I don't think that has anything to do with what you're talking about because their run total is higher than most of these other teams. I think it's all because the Dodgers have this, and the Atlanta has this.
Okay, all right, fair enough then. Okay,
but I don't think it's because they're afraid of picking on Dinelson.
No, I don't. Okay, because normally I just the way these projections work. Normally, just a team like San Francisco on the spot would be like 1,000,000%. And they would even project better. They're projecting no better for me than Arizona. If you want to know the truth.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
I don't understand why. You know what I mean? Like Lamet hasn't gotten the guy out in 3 years, and I don't know. Maybe because these guys are all look like they're on the IL. Nobody knows who's playing for San Francisco. What do you think of this game? I mean,
I think it's a bullpen game, and I think that bullpen games in general are always going to be worst games.
Okay.
And the one thing is like, I'm not going to do it with Manaea. If Manaea was just flat out starting and it was 5K, I probably would play him. But I'm not into messing with this because you even saw it last night. It throws off the thing. Carlos Hernandez, he struck out everybody in the first inning or something. So then they bring in Michael Mayers in the third inning instead, and it's just like the whole thing just I don't know. I don't like doing it out of the bullpen, especially in Colorado. But I actually was considering it for a minute. It is hilarious that DraftKings keep pricing a relief pitcher at 8,100 in Brebbia. But I've never seen that before, but it's kind of fun to watch. I like pairing parts of San Francisco. I don't think they're going to be low owned. I think that it's going to be more consistently owned throughout the lineup, in my opinion. So I think that like everybody's going to be like double digit ish owned, where I don't think that's necessarily the case for any other team. But it's one of those things like you have all these great bats in great spots, and then you've got San Francisco who doesn't, this is not like a high potent offensive team, and you've now on top of it. You've got a team now that look, you bring in a lefty, and then what happens? You lose half of your roster.
That's true. That's true.
You have Conforto, Yastrzemski, and we don't even know about them. They're questionable today.
You do have Peterson rates to be back today.
Who does?
Jock Peterson.
Yeah, he's supposed to play today. But he's another one that might get to it. Yeah. This is what happens, and you're facing a team with a guy who's probably only going to pitch 3 innings anyway. So that makes it even more likely that would happen. And they have a ton of righties on the bench. This is how the Giants play. They do the same thing the Rays do. They platoon literally like half their team a huge portion of the game. So it does make it a trickier stack. Lamont Wade, Peterson, Conforto potentially, although he probably stays in. Yastrzemski probably comes out. One of those two probably could come out anyway. Basically every lefty in this lineup. So I am on San Francisco. I do have them as another team that I want to play, and I'm not like over excited about it, but I'm more looking at it as pieces, and not because more because of the pinch hit, and just that there's other better spots on this slate with better hitters. But Jock Peterson, I'm not gonna. You put Peterson, put the Giants outfield out there. I'm happy to take that shot and go from there. It is interesting because as usual, we're gonna have no ownership on Colorado. So because of that, I would just say take some shots on Colorado. Maybe because it's somewhat of a bullpen-ish game against Manaea, who's very streaky but can be good. Maybe you make it maybe you use them more for 3 or 4-man stacks. But I think that they're viable just because of the lack of ownership, and the position isn't that different than the other side. So that's where I'm at.
If you did play San Francisco, I would definitely recommend you use the Blake Sable. At catcher. I guess that's where I'll leave it.
I don't think he's going to play today, but if he does play, I would.
Really against a righty?
It's not like that with catchers. They just get breaks. You know what I mean? Like
but he got yesterday off. It looks like.
Why do I have him as projected as out on 3 different sites, and I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, no. MLB now has him out. Early on last night, they didn't have him in.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why he's projected that. Yeah, he should play tonight. I don't see why he wouldn't. Yeah, that's a good point. And they always put, he might end up leading off tonight. You don't know what's going to happen with the Giants in their lineup. So he may end up being one of the best, most popular plays on the slate. And right now he doesn't look like much. So I do think that how the Giants lineup shakes out is going to dictate a lot of the ownership. Because if you end up with both of the lefties out and you're playing like 2K guys in Coors Field, they're going to end up being more popular than the Dodgers are, if that happens. All right. So, yeah. Why don't you start off with this one? Because I'm almost embarrassed what my take is here.
Oh, all right. So as far as Cubs and the Angels go, again, I'll just throw it out there. The top overall leverage stack on the board, I said, was Arizona. Second was Texas for me, and third was the Angels, for whatever that's worth. So I do have the Angels as a good stack here. And as far as pitching goes, I don't really know much about Tyler Anderson. As far as to play him, I do know that was Newski. Even though what's his name, the Angels do look like a good stack. He does have some ability. I probably will have played worse 6,700 guys than him, but I don't really think I'm going to get to him. So for me, it's going to be probably forcing in some Angels because I'm kind of like that, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I honestly could look at it. I'm totally confused by Wisniewski and what they do with him. He barely pitched a couple starts ago, and I don't really have a clear explanation as to why. Maybe somebody else out there knows a little more and figured that one out. There's a good chance that even if he's pitching well, he only goes 3 or 4 innings. Like I just don't know. I don't know what to do with it. So I would take some shots on Tyler Anderson tonight. For the reasons I mentioned about the hitting and the fact that none of the pitchers, while there's a lot of pitching options, none of them are so exciting and in great spots where we should be like, oh, this is the matchup. Like, look, we have the highest owned pitcher. The most popular pitcher is going to be facing Houston. That's tough. You know what I mean? Why not play Tyler Anderson and take some shots? Hope he plays clean. This guy was a very good pitcher not long ago. Like, he might be a good like commercial for what the bad side of what happens if you pitch the World Baseball Classic. He was like the best pitcher for the American team. I don't really know what's fallen apart for him this year. He's definitely not been as good with his control. He's given up more hard contract. You can steal on him. There's a lot of things that are flags, and he doesn't strike out a lot of people. But he's an overall good pitcher who tends to keep the ball. Like, there's hard hits, but he doesn't give up like home runs or anything. It's weird to me. I just can't quite figure him out and why he's been so bad. I am going to take a shot or two because I'm spending up on a lot of my bats, and mostly because I think 12 to 15 points from your pitcher. Yes, there are going to be other guys that get to 25 tonight probably, but they don't seem obvious to me who they are, and I just don't think that it's like I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense to take a shot on a really cheap guy today, and I may end up totally regretting that. It's just that the pitching all seems so bunched up, even at the higher end. With the lower end, that why wouldn't I just play a guy who I think can get me by with 12 to 15? I'd like to have a little more upside, but I can't have everything. So and then you'll start off our last game, so I'll sort of sum up my general thoughts. But
yeah, so Seattle against San Diego, and once again, you have. Listen, I don't know why I thought this, but when I first looked at the slate, I said, "Oh, I'm going to be sneaky and play Joe Musgrove." I keep forgetting that he's like the most owned pitcher in the United States. I mean,
every single all the time.
What?
He's so cheap all the time.
Yeah, every single time he pitches, he's 100% owned apparently. It's not exactly the greatest matchup in the world. I mean, Seattle's not bad, but I do have him rated as a good play. As a matter of fact, I do have him rated, alongside of Peralta is like the best value. So depending on how you want to build, I think that the Peralta Musgrove combination, I'll go back to that. So funny. That's where I identified before I looked at the projections as what I want to do. And maybe that'll end up what I want to do anyway. But, hey, Logan Gilbert, 9,900. Listen, tough matchup. It's probably some better options at 10K. I have to scroll 100 miles down to get to him in my projections. But I don't know. 0% owned, maybe. I don't know. Maybe if you're gonna do that, maybe you should just play Hunter Brown. Now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, I'm not getting as far as projections go. I'll probably end up playing Musgrove, and I'm not getting into any of it.
Yeah, Seattle is one of the 5 worst teams in baseball against right-handed pitching.
Oh, okay.
So I actually think it is a great matchup, but and that, I expect those numbers to fully get better for Seattle as the season goes on, but they're really bad. And the other side of it, you sort of have to like, I don't know, it's not the most fun play in the world to play against San Diego, but I'm good with I think Gilbert and Brown. Look, you want to play the Dodgers and Giants? Why don't we play Gilbert and Brown as our pitchers? You know what I mean? Let's go.
Yeah.
With it. Why can't they outscore? Like there's all of these pitchers I've got on my list: Keller, Gausman, Bieber, Paxton, Peralta, Anderson, Musgrove, Gilbert. Who the hell am I so happy about that I can't play? Brown, Gilbert. Why can't I play those guys? I don't feel so excited about all these other guys. So I'm going to probably get weird with pitching tonight, which is a very strange thing on a 12-game slate. But I just don't feel great about the guys at the top. And I will have Musgrove like probably in either my main build on DK or at least one of my 4 on FanDuel. But even that's got some variance. None of these guys feel especially safe today. So I'm on board with the idea of getting a little weird with the pitching overall. And I went through all the guys who I'm probably going to use. It's hard to even say favorites for me for pitching because I really don't rate anybody being that much different than the others. I think just because of the price, like, look, we know there's a blow up path. We just saw it, but I think the right thing to do is probably make Peralta your highest owned pitcher along with Musgrove. But it doesn't mean that like, because they're going to be owned, I have no problem if you just want to say, you know what, F that. I don't want to play these guys at high ownership and go somewhere else. They're the 2. And I don't even say, I want to say, use the word safe, but I feel the best about them getting close to 20 fantasy points and they're in the 8K, the 7K, high 7K range. Stacks are the Dodgers, Braves, and Giants as my favorites. Pittsburgh value, I think, is interesting, and I like Arizona that we talked about. That's the way I'm probably going to be stacking today.
Yeah, so let me do a couple of things as long as we're here. I mean, there's no other sports. As far as FanDuel goes, I'll just say that as much as the Dodgers look like a good play on DraftKings, they look like a complete like standout for me on FanDuel. So I'll just kind of like leave that.
That's gonna be really popular over there, I think.
Yep. And other stacks over there are actually nothing. Same teams I mentioned: Atlanta, San Francisco, Arizona, Angels. As far as pitching, I do have the pitching over there being pretty spread out. I mean, you could make a case for any of it. I mean, you could play Musgrove at 83. You could play Gausman at 11-1. You remember 2 totally different builds.
Yeah.
But I don't see a huge difference between a lot of these guys. So you could even play. We can play Peralta, Mitch Keller. I mean, all these guys look good. Maybe even Schmidt over there. I have Schmidt pretty low owned.
The problem with Schmidt is the 6 innings is much harder for him to get to than everybody else. And I use that as my barometer on FanDuel. If everything else, give me the guys who are pitching 6 innings consistently.
So here's another thing I want to do. Yeah. So here's another thing I want to do. I want to do a Saberson mill just for fun, just to see. We got time. We got nothing going on.
By the way, I just want to point out with Bieber having this terrible season, he's pitched 13 times this year. He has 10 quality starts in those 13 starts.
I mean, has he had a terrible season or just bad for fantasy?
It's definitely way worse than we would have expected from him. But he's got a 3.7 ERA. It's not that bad. You know what I mean? He's had a couple bad outings, but you throw 6 quality starts up there, or 10 quality starts out of 13 starts. That's pretty damn good. That's probably right up there with the top of the league.
All right, so we build 150 lineups. Where do you think, when we spin the wheel, because I haven't done this yet, we would end up on Saberson? I'm going to say
Arizona's going to be way up there.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because they're going to show up from the low ownership standpoint, and their offense is going to produce enough.
I'm going to say, I don't know. I'm thinking Saberson loves the Musgrove. Let's see what it comes up with.
Even when he's popular, huh?
We'll find out in a second. Tyler Anderson, highest owned pitcher.
Look at that.
There it is. There it is.
My guy. Well, at least you can't make too much fun of me if SaberSim's coming up.
Tyler Anderson. Well, because you see 5% ownership. That's a big deal,
Yeah, and he's ownership 56.
Tyler Anderson, Musgrove, and Peralta. And
look who's next. Everybody is from one team. Sheets. Who is it?
And then spend. Yep, Arizona. Let's see.
All Arizona. I told you.
Team stacks. Yep, 41% Zona and 24% St. Louis.
Interesting.
And then Dodgers, Pittsburgh. Let's see and mostly 5-mans.
Yep.
So that's something you don't see too often, like paying down for Tyler Anderson, so you can pay up for Ketel Marte. You don't really get that too often. Oh, that's gonna be fun.
I think that is, but I think that there is a real merit to the Arizona thing, and I'm curious if later on in the higher buy-ins, if they might end up being a little bit a little higher on than everybody thinks. Because I do think people will catch on to this. Well, this is a really good spot too. And they seem like a good pivot away from, whether you want to call it chalk or whatever, the obvious spots of Dodgers, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh.
So what I'm going to end up doing, by the way, is that whatever I get as far as SaberSim goes, I am going to force in my leverage guys. So if everything stays the same, I am going to force in some Texas, Arizona, and I'm going to probably force in some Angels just to shock the system a little bit. Mm-hmm. Tyler Anderson, how about them apples, huh?
That's pretty wild. That's almost like, that looks like I might have to just adopt their build and just take it, because that's sort of like I'm not playing as much of the Arizona right now, but I think that's a really good way to go especially for large field tournaments. Yeah,
waking up feeling SaberSim's systems are feeling pretty salty today. We'll see what happens.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to have my content up in a little bit for the premium members, and we'll go from there. We've got an NBA game tomorrow. I am going to be around tomorrow, and am available. I'm guessing. I know you're not available for the live, but if there's anybody,
I'm out tomorrow for live.
Yeah, if there's anybody with anything going on, I'll jump down in there, because I'm going to be watching the game anyway.
Oh, you mean like the live sweat tomorrow night?
Yeah, I just might jump in just because I'm going to be doing the game anyway. Anyway, well, good luck to everybody tonight, and let's crush it. We'll see you guys later on. I'll see you at what is it, 6 Eastern today? Yeah, 6 Eastern.